Hello everyone, welcome to another video. This is part 14 of my Gateway API for Kubernetes series. Today I want to follow up on my last video and I want to show you how you can install Traefik inside your Kubernetes cluster to use it as a Gateway API. This allows you to have the Gateway API inside the cluster, therefore you don't have to pay for any external services, for example the Azure Application Gateway for containers, what you have seen at the beginning of this series, and you also don't have a vendor login with any cloud provider. You can take your Kubernetes cluster, deploy it somewhere else, and it will work exactly the same way. The downside of this approach is that you have to take care of handling all the requests and therefore also of scaling out your cluster if necessary. If you have to scale out because a Gateway API is using too many resources, then obviously you have to pay for the additional computing costs. But for learning, I think that's a great way because we'll see it only takes a couple minutes to set up. And if you have a cluster running, you don't have to pay anything extra. So the plan for today is I'm going to show you the Gateway API with Traefik. And just a couple introduction words. If you already know Traefik as an ingress, then it will be very familiar. You can also, during the deployment, tell Traefik if you want to use the ingress or the Gateway API feature. So it's just an additional flag. Additionally, what's great compared to the Nginx deployment from the last video, we'll deploy Traefik with a Helm chart, and this Helm chart automatically deploys all the custom resource definitions we need for the Gateway API. The Gateway API is not part of core Kubernetes, therefore we have to deploy the CIDs to be able to use it. With Nginx, we had to deploy them separately and then deploy Nginx. With Traefik, everything comes with the Helm chart, therefore it's basically one command and we have our Gateway API running. Then the same as with Nginx, Traefik offers additional features. I just want to mention them. I'm not going into them. I will have a link in the description to the documentation. If you're interested, you can take a look. And also if you have used Traefik as ingress in the past, you'll be familiar with all these features. But these additional features can be observability, then it can help you to secure your APIs, and it also provides a dashboard, so you can see what is going on inside your cluster. Something I have to say about Traefik is that the documentation and the setup was really frustrating. Like, I don't want to tell you how many hours I spent on trying to get it running, using the official documentation, using other blogs, using YouTube videos. Nothing they did or provided worked for me. It always failed. Like, the deployment worked, but then I was not able to connect to my applications. Then in the basically last try effort, I got it working. I'm not entirely sure why I got it working, but what I did was cut down the configuration to the minimum to get it working, and then suddenly it worked. So I will show you what I did, how I get it working. Maybe you know better how it works, what I was supposed to do. So please let me know in the comments. I'm thankful for all the help and the insights you can provide. But with this said, now let's switch over to the terminal and let's create our Kubernetes cluster and then deploy Traefik as the Gateway API. All right, here in the terminal, as always, let's define a couple variables. So that's the name of the AKS cluster I'm going to use, the location and the resource group. Next, we have the information about the gateway. This means the name of the namespace, the name of the gateway, and the name of the gateway class. Lastly, we have a new namespace and name for the test application. Usually I use the name Traefik for a test application, but since Traefik is our gateway, it would be too confusing to have Traefik as gateway and test application. Therefore, it's just called test app in this video. Then we're going to create our resource group. We're going to deploy our AKS cluster inside this resource group. And as you can see here, I'm using the bare minimum. So it's just AC AKS create, the name of the cluster and the resource group. As always, I will have a link in the description down below with all the demos, the code, everything I show you today. So you can just download it from GitHub and copy paste. You don't have to type anything. And you also don't have to use Azure. I'm an Azure guy, therefore I use AKS for my Kubernetes cluster. But if you want to follow the demo, you can use it on-premise. You can use the kind from Docker Desktop, AWS, whatever you want. The only thing if you don't use a cloud provider is that you don't get a public IP address. Therefore, you would have to do a port forwarding on your Traefik Gateway to be able to access your cluster. If you have a cloud provider, we'll see later, I get a public IP address and then I can call this public IP address and access my test application. For now, I'm going to stop the video. It will take around 5 minutes for the cluster to deploy. And once the cluster is created, we will continue. Our AKS cluster has been deployed, so the last step is to download the credentials so we can access the cluster. With the cluster set up, now let's add the Traefik Helm chart, just a Helm repo add with the URL for Traefik. As you can see, it already exists for me, so it's skipping this, but I always like to do a Helm repo update, just in case if there's a new version since I used it the last time. Once this is done, we can now install the Helm chart. As you can see, the only parameter we have to set here is the Kubernetes gateway enabled is set to true. This tells Traefik that we want to use the gateway API and not the ingress. Then we're also going to provide a namespace and create this namespace. So the Helm chart is now deploying everything it needs for Traefik inside this new namespace. It should only take maybe around half a minute, maybe a minute. And there you can already see it's already finished, so it was even faster. Now let's give it a couple more seconds to get it started, and then we take a look at everything that has been deployed in this new gateway namespace. So if we do a kubectl get all, then we can see we have here a service of type load balancer. And here we can also see what I said before. Since I'm using Azure, this means a cloud provider, I get a public IP address. I can use this public IP address later to access my test application. Then we have also one pod running, but this also means it's not high available. So for production workload, you want to update the Helm chart deployment and probably tell it to have 3 or 5 replicas. Next up, let's take a look at our gateway. So we do a kubectl get gateway in this new namespace. And here you can see this time we also have a gateway provided already by Traefik. When we used Nginx, we had to create the gateway ourselves. Here you can see the name of the gateway, then the gateway class that has also been created by the Traefik deployment. Again, the public IP address. Then the programmed state is set to true. This means everything seems to be working. If something is wrong, then it will be false. And this is already the first indication that something went wrong. But for now, everything looks good. And one last thing is, let's take a look inside this gateway with a kubectl describe gateway, then the name we provided, or actually the name Traefik provided, and the namespace we have deployed it. Here you can see no error found, status is true, so everything looks good. But if you scroll up here, there's just one thing I don't like for my testing, and this is that the listener only allows traffic or routes from the same namespace. This means I have now to deploy my test application in the same namespace as the Gateway API. I prefer to have one Gateway API for my entire cluster, therefore I have it in a separate namespace, and therefore I want to have traffic or HTTP routes from all namespaces. This means we have to update this setting. Something that's also important to know and is Traefik specific is the port is 8000. It's not 80, which it's usually. And the name here is web. So now we're going to update the gateway. We're going to update the namespace from and set it to all, but we leave everything else as it is. So let's clean this up and let me paste the new gateway definition. So here you can see it's the kind gateway. We provide the name and the namespace, then also the namespace, the gateway class. And here we have the listener we have seen before, except here we change the from to all. This means we can, in the next step, deploy our test application in a separate namespace and the HTTP route in this namespace as well. And we'll be able to access the test application through the Gateway API. So let's apply this new configuration. Then the first time you do this, you just get a warning. But the kubectl takes care of it, and the next time you execute a command, you won't get this warning, so you can just ignore it for now. One last thing I want to do is write the public IP address into a variable. So I can just do a kubectl get gateway and then pass the address into the variable. So if we take a look at this variable, we can see it's the same public IP address as before. And I'm going to use it in a later step to access the test application. Speaking of the test application, we can now deploy it. So I'm going to paste it again, but since we want to focus on the Gateway API, I will just quickly go through it. So we're deploying here a new namespace. Then we have a deployment inside this namespace for the test app. Just one replica to keep it as simple as possible. As container, I'm using the Traefik API because it tells you what the host name is and some useful information. Lastly, we have the service, which is cluster IP. This means it's only accessible through the Gateway API, and the ports are 80. This means it's listening on port 80 and it's sending to the container on port 80. Then we're going to apply this. And while our pods are being created, we can now also create the HTTP route. This is again nothing new. I've showed this in the videos before. So if you're interested in a step-by-step setup, take a look at the playlist, which is in the description below, where I show you how to set up the gateway, HTTP routes, how to do the routing, and everything step-by-step explained. For now, we're just creating this HTTP route. We're listening on all paths, and we send our request to the test application. Let's apply this. Then it usually takes a couple seconds until it's fully applied. So while this is happening, let's take a look at our test application namespace and what we have running there. Here we can see we have the service of type cluster IP and we have our one pod running. So everything is working, and now we can test the access. So either we open the browser, or I can just do a simple curl HTTP, then the public IP address, and I use the use basic passing parameter, because since I'm using HTTP, I would get a warning otherwise. If I execute this, we will see we have here HTTP status code 200, so that's already good. Here you can see the host name is test app deployment. That's the application we just deployed, and this proves that even though our application was not accessible from outside the cluster, we were able to access it through the Gateway API, and everything works as we intended to. All right, this is already everything I wanted to show you today. So today we have seen that Traefik Gateway API is super easy to install. All we need is the Helm chart, and then we set the Gateway API enabled to true, and that's it. The Helm chart deploys the custom resource definitions for the Gateway API, and it also creates a gateway and gateway class. So in theory, there's nothing we have to do. We can just deploy the Helm chart and use it. We've also seen how to update the gateway. This means in the demo, we updated it to be able to access applications in all namespaces. But again, it was just a simple command and then it worked. As I said before, I didn't have any luck with the official documentation or other YouTubers or blogs. So I don't really know what the problem is. So if you have the Gateway API of Traefik running already, please let me know in the comments. But besides this, I really like the setup. Just a Helm chart and it's already running. So especially for beginner, it's great. You execute one command and then you can get started learning the Gateway API. Once you're done, you delete it. If you need it again, one command and you have set it up and it's running. Also, since we don't use any additional cloud services, we don't have to pay for anything. Since we are learning, we don't have a lot of traffic, therefore we also don't need more resources. Traefik also has more additional features like the observability or the dashboard, which can be helpful for your production environment. And so far, I'm not sure which one I like more, Nginx or Traefik. So again, if you have experience with any of them, let me know in the comments. I'm curious to hear what you think. And next week, I'm going to show you the same setup with Envoy Proxy. I think this might be my favorite so far, but we'll see next week if I still have the same opinion. If you like this kind of videos and want to know more about Kubernetes, Azure, DevOps, please subscribe to the channel. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like it, tell me why you didn't like it. And I hope to see you next week with another video.